Greetings everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be going over Engineer. This is a new class for D&D 5th. It is custom made by yours truly. I'm excited to share it with you guys. I will say that I know that there's an Artificer class out there. It's cool. I've looked it over. Props to the people who made it, but this is something different. The intention of this class is to be an individual who stands out on the cusp of technology within a sword and sorcery setting. We're talking a more traditional fantasy world. So I know that there's Spelljammer campaigns out there, and I know that there's a lot of sci-fi material out there. That's all really cool stuff, and love it for its own purposes. But this is a class meant for a more traditional D&D setting. Um, I will just make a quick mention that I would love to do fancier graphics and more production in this video. That will come with time as this channel grows, so bear with me. We're just going to be looking at a lot of text, but there's a lot of cool and interesting stuff here. I am more than happy to share this class with anybody who is interested in it. I'm not charging anything for it. It's been tested. People have found it fun, balanced. I've got 25 years of D&D in me, and you know, I work really hard to make sure that these classes are fair and realistic to play and enjoy. So let's get right into it. I've got 2 pages open here. We're just going to go ahead and scroll through. On the right hand side here, I've got the very top of the document. On the left hand side here, we're looking at the class's leveling block, just as you would find in the player's handbook. The way the classes are laid out, I've laid this class and my other classes out in the same way. It's easy to digest, and it's familiar to players who play a lot of 5th, or even if you haven't played a lot of 5th, it's pretty easy to get through. Now, I will say Engineer has a bit of some complex, mechanics and some things to it. It's a little word heavy, so people seeking very simple classes to play, this might not be that, but it is a very cool concept, and I'm really happy to share it with you guys. So we're going to dive right in. Engineer. This is a master of crafting, machinery, and intelligent design. The engineer is the mad inventor living on the cusp of innovative technology amidst a fantasy setting. Pioneers of invention, engineers utilize worked metals, smithing skills, natural resources, and an ingenious mind to employ steam, coal, and gunpowder technologies while adventuring. Just as a 5th edition class is laid out, the first thing you're going to see in there is you're going to find the class's proficiencies. Its HP per level, what skills it gets, all of that is right here. Our engineer is working on a D8 hit dice, so a reasonable amount of health, not the healthiest class, but also not the squishiest. The proficiencies are pretty limited, but there's a reason for that. It goes along with one of their features. They do have access to some martial one-handed weapons, some ranged weapons. There's a good mixture there, so you're not super limited. The skills it chooses from are Arcana, Acrobatics, Perception, History, Investigation, and Sleight of Hand. So there's a little bit of finesse of hand, there's a little bit of intelligence, there's a little bit of perception in there. But this is an intelligence and dexterity based class. Those are going to be your 2 important stats for this class. Scrolling through, we're going to head right to the description of the features because we have this block open on the left hand side here. So the very first level, when you take level 1 in Engineer, what you're going to get is Tool Weapon as a feature and Combat Engineering as a feature. These are 2 features that are really key to this class, and they really start setting it up for its thematics and what it's going to do. Tool Weapon is the very first feature. And what this does is it takes a preferred weapon that the engineer chooses, and it utilizes it, it designates it as almost sort of a magical tool. It's going to be an item that is going to function well in combat and also well for skill checks. So an engineer utilizes a tool that doubles as a weapon, or is it a weapon that doubles as a tool? At first level, the engineer chooses a melee weapon type such as light hammers and fashions a tool weapon. This weapon functions as a normal weapon for its type, but it also has the following properties while being wielded in combat. Tool weapons will grant a +3 bonus to skill checks made to disarm traps or damage objects. They're just more useful for those ideas. especially because the engineer has a big familiarity with technology and constructs in general. Using the tool weapon also grants you advantage on checks made against disarming effects. If anything gives you a save but is trying to disarm you, this tool weapon is going to give you advantage on those checks. An engineer is very familiar with his preferred tool. It's like another hand to him. So it's something that he's not going to drop easily. He's familiar with the balance and the weight of it. You're also going to gain a d6 damage bonus when striking constructs with this tool weapon. This is for the rest of the game. Level 1 to level 20, you've got a little bit of a damage edge on constructs, which is not an all-the-time thing, but it's a nice thing when it comes up. You're fighting a golem or something of that nature, it's going to become relevant. Should you wish to designate a new tool weapon, you got to spend a 16-hour process crafting the new weapon in a methodical trance. And it's 16 hours specifically, so you can get an 8-hour rest in. It's basically just to say that it's going to take you the better part of a day to make this and become familiar with it and to basically attune to it. The next feature that you get at level 1 is combat engineering. There are 3 major components to combat engineering. You get all 3 of them. You don't have to choose between them. And they are pretty, I want to say basic, not in the terms of, they're simple mechanics, but they're basic in the sense that they're not going to do a ton of damage. They're not going to be spectacular abilities. This is still core mechanics that are building up the class and that are really going to give it some flavor. So at level 1, all engineers are going to get access to all 3 of these abilities from combat engineering. This is a global term that's going to cover all 3 of these. The first of the 3 features is craft combat trap. And this is using an action to create a simple, quickly laid trap in an unoccupied space you can reach. You get to roll a stealth check along with putting the trap down, but to keep this long story short, it is a trap that is going to make an attack against somebody who steps on it. It's going to use your dexterity modifier to attack the creature, and if it hits, it's going to reduce their speed and deal them some damage. You can only have one of these laid out at any time when you begin, but there's ways of increasing that later. So, combat trap, that's the first part of combat engineering. Craft combat shooter is the second feature you're going to get from combat engineering. This, long story short, is, for the lack of a better term, a miniature turret. We're not talking anything crazy, highly technological. We're talking basically a hand crossbow on a tripod that will pull its trigger for itself. Without giving you every word of this, it's going to hold 3 shots. It's got specific stats that you get from the monster manual, and you can look into that more later. But it's going to make an attack action to fire 1 time as a free action on your turn. It's going to use your dex, and it's going to deal damage like a hand crossbow. You can only have 1 of these active at any given time, unless you go and you change that later through specifications in the class. So far you've got craft combat trap. You can have 1 trap laid out somewhere. Craft combat shooter, you're going to have a little turret that's going to take 3 shots, and they don't deal a ton of damage. The range isn't that crazy far, so don't let this seem like it's going to be too much. And then the third ability that you get from combat engineering, this is still all at first level, is craft combat consumable. You may use an action during your turn to quick craft a consumable item using no components. You may only have a number of combat consumables crafted at any time equal to your intelligence modifier, so it's going to be maybe 5 at most. Crafted combat consumables are going to disappear at the end of any combat, so they're not something that you hold on to outside of a fight. So you can almost think of this as a supernatural effect. You're going to make an item out of thin air, more or less, and you're able to hand this to your allies, or you're able to throw it at enemies. There are 3 different little consumables that it specifies and allows you to make. One of them will glue somebody in place or slow them down. 1 heals, 1 deals damage. But long story short, you have the ability to make in-combat consumable items that don't require materials, don't require money to make, and are going to disappear at the end of the fight. Those 3 features, combat trap, combat shooter, and combat consumable, these are all part of combat engineering, and you get all of that at level 1. So tool, weapon, and combat engineering, that's going to be the very base level core of this class. And every engineer is going to have access to those abilities through the whole of their career. Um, Now we're moving on to second level. Second level, you're going to get an automaton guardian, and you're going to get what's called crafting magic. The automaton is basically a rust monster without its rusting abilities. You're talking a medium-sized insect-like creature, although it becomes a construct, and there's some specifications on when it moves, and it shares your actions, and it uses part of your skill checks to make its skill checks. Anybody interested in the class, they can take a look more at those specifics. I'm not going to go over every one of them here because I don't want to bog you guys down. But get excited because this is a full-time, almost like an animal companion for, ranger or druid. You're going to have a robot guardian. Now this will be able to do a little bit of combat. It's not going to be, crazy damaging or crazy tough, but it's going to be able to hold its own a little bit. But you're going to be able to change it with features later on. There are various levels when this automaton will gain improvements. Level 6, it's going to get more bite damage and more HP. Level 14, it's going to get spider climb as a feature. And level 19, it's going to start using your saving throws and gain some physical damage reduction. So this is basically a robot guardian. It can take some hits from some enemies. It's going to be able to fight with you a little bit, but you're also going to be able to put it to use in cool ways outside of combat. You're going to be able to have it climb into rooms, maybe push switches that are hard and out of reach, carry around some things, what have you. Crafting magic is the other second level feature that engineer is going to get. At second level, the engineer gains access to certain spells, but when they're used by the engineer, they're treated as supernatural abilities. This is specifically that they don't count as magic. They can't be countered by counterspell, things like that. These are representations of an engineer's near supernatural ability to invent on the fly or to, work with technology in ways that other people in these fantasy settings aren't familiar with. And to a lot of the less educated peoples in these worlds, it's going to look like magic because it really is, it's very complex. It's hard to believe at a sight. So throughout the career of an engineer at various levels, level 2 and then level 11, you're going to get an improvement at level 11. There's some spells that you get as spell-like abilities, and these are pretty basic. They're mostly to do with crafting. There's a few that aren't. You're going to get light mending and shocking grasp as cantrips. Once per long rest, you're going to get to use alarm, distort value, or identify. This video isn't the place to explain what those abilities do, but you can imagine, and if you're interested, you can go look up, or you might very well be familiar with what they do already. At level 11, your crafting magic feature is going to improve. Once per short rest, you're going to get find traps, immovable object, and water breathing. All of these can be described as technological advances that your character's at, making something that lets somebody breathe underwater, so on and so forth. You're going to describe these as technology. And then once per long rest, you're going to get access to Arcane Eye, Gate Seal, and Summon Construct. And these are the only spell-like abilities that Engineer is going to get. They don't get any spells to be specific. They have plenty of other features that are going to make it worthwhile where they don't really need to have spells. But these are some spell-like abilities that they're going to get that can't be countered using Counterspell or anything like that. Now, that was level 1 and level 2. You've got tool, weapon, combat engineering, automaton guardian, and crafting magic. Those are some pretty basic abilities. We're putting down little traps. We're putting down a little turret here or there. Nothing crazy, nothing overly complicated. We're going to get some basic spell-like abilities, and we're going to get a tool weapon. Awesome. Come level 3. As most classes in D&D 5th, you're going to pick between 3 pathways. These are archetypes, or archetypes, depending on how you like to pronounce it. This class has a full breakdown of archetypes, and I'm not going to tell you what every level does in each one of these archetypes. That would be a lot to go over in this video. Again, anybody interested in this class, I'll send it right to you. Just, like, subscribe, hit me a comment, and I'm happy to share it, whether that's through Discord or through Google Docs. But I'm going to give a quick little overview of the archetypes. The first is Chemist. This is a an engineer that is going to specialize in making combat consumables and alchemy, things like that. You're going to get the ability to benefit from your beneficial potions right when you make them without consuming them. You're going to get improved abilities on throwing items. You're going to get stuff like that, and you're going to get new combat consumables to make towards the end of the game that are going to be pretty powerful and pretty cool items. This is a chemist. You're throwing bottles, you're drinking bottles, you're dousing enemies in bottles. You're making them for very little material components, if any. Very, very cool alchemy focused engineer. The second archetype you can go into is robotics. And this engineer is going to be specifically specialized in making its combat shooters better. You're going to have up to 3 little turrets. Their damage is going to go up. They're going to be able to move around a little bit. They're going to get better AC and more hit points so they can, resist some enemy damage. And then towards the end of the career of this engineer, the engineer is actually going to ascend to being a construct itself, no longer needing to eat, sleep, or breathe, only having to rest, half as much, so on and so forth. So this archetype, if you go this path, one of the 3, this robotics archetype is going to focus on your mechanics, your combat shooters, and becoming a construct yourself and gaining benefits from that. And the third archetype is gunsmith. Now, the specifics on this, when we say guns, I want to make a little addendum here. This is a setting where it's mostly sword and sorcery, and that's what this class is geared for. So when the engineer presented here gets access to firearms, we're talking simple flintlock pistols, flintlock rifles. We're not talking AKs, machine guns, ARs. We're not talking anything modern like that. Don't take me wrong. And it's up to the DM in this game where this class is present to kind of figure out where they want to fall in terms of firearms. We treat them like slowly reloading powerful hand crossbows, more or less. They're loud, they take some unique ammunition, but we're not talking egregious amounts of damage. It's still a pretty reasonable to use ranged weapon. But the gunsmith is going to improve its combat traps vastly. It's going to be able to lay up to 3 of them, and they're going to trigger more often. They're going to deal more damage, and you're going to get bonuses on your gun attacks, your firearm attacks against creatures that have fallen prey to these traps. So you're building this kind of combo of laying traps around, being in hiding, getting attacks on vulnerable enemies, and dealing extra damage with them. You're getting expertise in firearms. You're going to get guncraft mastery towards the end, where you're doubling the range of your guns, reach, and they're dealing even more damage and critical hitting more often. But a very gun-focused engineer, the gunsmith. Those are your 3 archetypes. You'll pick one of those at level 3, and then at various levels thereafter, there's going to be abilities that they get. We're talking level 3, 7, 10, 15, 18, and that's pretty much the standard with a lot of D&D 5th classes. Next, looking down at the table, at level 4, you're going to get an ability score increase or a feat. This is standard across 5th edition classes. It might vary level to level, class to class, but some point in every class's career, there's going to be levels where they get an ability score increase or a feat, and that's the same with engineer. And you're going to see more of those at level 8 and at level 12, level 16. They're going to move on in a periodical fashion, the same way it would for any other class. Now, moving on to level 5, the engineer is going to get its first innovation. Innovations are really cool. At various levels, the engineer is going to invent a new permanent repairable invention to aid it on its adventure. At each innovation gained, you may choose one of the following inventions to craft. The first time you craft it, it's going to be free. You're not going to have to pay for it, but if you ever have to replace it, you're going to have to pay triple your level in gold pieces, which, depending on how your game scales gold, isn't really that much. You can always work with your D&D if it seems like it's going to be a lot if you guys run a low gold, campaign or what have you. You can never have 2 functioning innovations of the same time, of the same kind. So these are one-off specific inventions that your character is going to have made over the course of their adventuring career that are going to help you in various ways. You can change these up as you need to while you're leveling. Making a new one is going to take a 16-hour process, just like your engineer's tool weapon. Um, I want to say that these are similar in the wheelhouse of like invocations for Warlock. You're going to get more innovations every so often. You'll wind up with, I think, 4 or 5 of them by the time you hit level 20. And they have a lot of various features. I'm not going to go over every one, but there is a cool, nice long table. I'm going to show you guys a couple of them. For example, there's a Mechanostrider. This is a robotic mount. It uses the statistics for a terror bird, except it loses all of its abilities, is a construct, and cannot attack. So you have a mechanical mount if you so choose it. There's a target dummy that you can drop on the ground that might trick less intelligent enemies into attacking it. You go through and those of you who are fandoms of various other genres besides D&D, you're going to see a lot of references in these. There's a lot of cool inventions. If anybody knows what goblin jumper cables are, go ahead and comment on this video. Let me know if you know where the goblin jumper cables come from, because I've had a love for them for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. But as you go through, there's a lot of cool ones. There's a little robot you can make that's gonna work in your profession for you. There's a shock generator that'll damage somebody like a chromatic orb. You've got a universal door that is gonna function as pass wall. There's just a lot of cool stuff in here. And beyond the following levels, like after level 5, you're going to get improvements to all of these features. There's going to be improvements on your automaton, more archetype features, more ability score increases. These just kind of improve level to level to level, and there's nothing really new beyond your innovations and your combat engineering abilities. But at level 20, there is one final, really, really awesome ability that engineer is going to get. This is called Ultimate Stopwatch. At level 20, you succeed in crafting an infamously fabled item of great power, originally designed by master engineers from the plane of Mechanus. This item is going to grant its user use of the time stop spell once per long rest. It is basically the peak of your inventing skills. You make yourself a little stopwatch that is going to stop time once per day for up to 4 rounds or whatever have you. You can go look at those spell details, in the player's handbook. But long-winded, maybe I'm a bit of a rambler. I'm going to scroll back up to the top here. But that is the entirety of this engineer class. So, quick overview. For those of you who are super, super cool, I love you to death for hanging out this long and checking out all the various details of this. This is, a class that I put a lot of love into for somebody who wanted to play something in the wheelhouse of an inventor, of somebody who was big on gadgets and mechanics and inventions. So you've got a class that is using a tool as a weapon, that is making little miniature turrets, traps, crafted alchemy items, and you're even going on to invent a robot guardian that will travel with you, and then later on some really cool, unique inventions to help you on your adventure along the way. There are some really cool builds with this. I'm currently running a campaign where somebody is doing the robotics build, and we're loving it to death. It doesn't feel overpowered. It doesn't feel like it's too much, although there is a lot of complexity to this class. So that is engineer. Love you guys all to death. I appreciate every viewer that I get. I'm really trying to build this this channel up. I'm going to be posting more of these classes. And again, to re-emphasize, I am going to share this with anybody who would like it. Just let me know the best way to get it to you, and it's yours. I would love to see any videos made or clips of you guys using it, of it being put to use in campaigns, or even if you guys have comments or you have criticisms, you want to tell me what you think of this. I would love to hear about it. Put it up in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you guys think. Thanks for staying tuned with me. This is Tip Top Tabletop Tips. Happy gaming to you guys all, and if you don't hear it from me sooner, happy holidays, and I hope everybody enjoys this very cold winter season so far. Peace and love, guys.